Ryan Patrick here at Peak Fitness and Sports Training. Today I'm going to go through several variations of a single leg Romanian deadlift or single leg RDL that we like to use here at Peak Fast. It's one of our favorite exercises for athletes, for our runners, and even for our general population to show that they've got great pelvic control, core and thorax control as they're on a single leg. We see a lot of compensations with this that may lead to inefficient movement, perhaps overusing some muscles that are inappropriate for the task, and possibly some injury. So this is one of the most butchered exercises, but we feel that there's a few cues that you can benefit from that are really going to help you improve the proficiency with which you perform this activity. Again, this is a true single leg exercise, meaning we've got one foot on the ground while the other leg goes through the entire excursion of the movement, compared to a lunge or a split squat, which we would term a split stance activity, where both feet contribute to the activity even though one is more dominant than the other. So go ahead and tune in. I'm going to show you these 5 variations, some of the pros and cons in my mind with how we coach and cue them, and ultimately what benefits you can get from this exercise. Let me get set up. First version I want to talk about is what most people probably view as the classic single leg Romanian deadlift variation. And that's where we've got one foot on the ground, that's our reference point, and the other foot is suspended in space. We're going through this range of motion without any other points of contact. This to me is the landmark. It's what you want to achieve uncompensated with body weight. But because there's so few external sources of contact, it's very easy to compensate. So let me show you a few of the major compensations that we see. I already talked about this over-lateralization, losing the hip, knee, and foot line. We see quite a bit of that as people rock back and forward on their foot, not really maintaining a good arch. From the side view, if people are extended, they're already in a compensated position before they start moving, so you'll see them try to keep their chest high as their leg swings back. They'll bend forward and just hit what they perceive as end range of motion by kicking that leg. If you're giving them a weight, you're going to see it might start good, but then the back goes, so we're not really loading the hip, we're loading the low back. And even if they can maintain relatively good position, we might see them get dominated by the weight. So now I'm not controlling my thorax, this weight's pulling me down into the motion. One other thing we see at all levels, unloaded, with weight, whatever, is that one hip will get higher than the other. So clients almost corkscrew into the bottom of this motion instead of actually keeping the pelvis level and showing that they've got good control. So great variation, something you should strive to achieve, but high potential for compensation. So let's look at some of the other progression or variation that we like is what we call a B stance single leg RDL. So instead of allowing this leg the freedom to kick through space, we're actually going to create a little bit of a kickstand, put maybe about 10% of our body weight here. What this is going to do is it's going to teach people first, hey, we've got a little more contact, we've got a little more support, so we can find some abs. And as we go through this variation, they find it easier to get into this hip capsule, keep their foot control maintained, so the heel, the arch, the toes are all accounted for. Watch this over-lateralization, and ultimately make sure that the hips stay level. So if you've got somebody who's a chronic corkscrewer, if you will, keeping grounded on this foot will allow them much more opportunity to keep a level pelvis and learn how to load this hip on the stance leg. Problems with that over time, we want to see people really learn how to maintain that pelvis without the control or without that contact of the other foot. So keep in mind that this might be a good breakout exercise, might be just good for a teachable moment, but ultimately, we want to progress. Variation is going to be a parallel stance single leg RDL. In this variation, it's somewhat of a bridge between our B stance single leg RDL and our true single leg RDL. I don't typically load this, but what I want to do is create this hip hinge movement with only one foot on the ground. Staying in parallel for some reason seems to help people learn how to create this hinge, how to keep their weight distributed over the foot that's in contact with the ground. And I don't have to worry about this leg coming out and causing me to corkscrew. So by keeping it in parallel, I can get a better sense that my hips are a little bit more parallel than if I were to bring this leg back. A lot of people seem to lose the sensation of position as that leg swings back, or depending on who it is, they may go right into extension. So with this variation, again, from the front, I can just lift that foot up. This hip will come a little bit higher. Don't worry about that too much. But now I just want to make sure I can create a nice hinge, keep that knee foot in hip line without over lateralizing, and just go through this range of motion. So that's our single leg RDL stance. In the intro about a single leg exercise only having one point of contact with the ground, or one point of reference. Because of that, it makes it a lot harder to stabilize everything through the trunk, the core, while we're going through this range of motion. So enter the Landmine single leg RDL. Because we've got an anchor point at the end of this bar, it gives us just a little bit more stability. So a great way to overload this exercise while providing a little bit of external stability to help people find position and make sure that they're not compensating. How do we set this up? Well, you're just going to set up a landmine. Okay, I like it to about midline on my body, so my hand's starting just over my thigh, bars ending about midline. I'm going to soften my knees, and then I'm going to execute this variation. So just like I would with a regular barbell in a Romanian deadlift, this is going to go right down where my opposite thigh is as I create that nice hip hinge. There's still potential to compensate, to extend. So you have to watch out for that. This is not a guarantee that all the compensations you see are going to be eradicated, but it's a great way to provide a little bit more stability in what I would consider kind of a transition step of this variation exercise. I want to show you is the slide board or valve slide single leg RDL. It's probably my least favorite, maybe because I feel I'm the worst at coaching this, but let me talk you through what's happening here. So we're gonna be in a single leg stance. However, this is gonna look like more of a split stance exercise because my foot's not actually gonna leave the ground. So I'm gonna soften my knees and I'm gonna shift my body weight forward as that back leg slides. Okay, this can be really nice for maintaining that line from ear to ankle. What we do see a lot of times is that people will bend forward as this leg goes back. We'll see way too much weight get into this back foot, so the front knee will bend, and instead of using just this leg, people are going to actually pull and shift off of the back foot. I do like this variation for people that tend to extend right when that foot leaves the ground, because this will teach them how to move into that hip without getting excessive extension from that back leg. So it definitely has its perks. Comes with a lot of challenges too, because people tend to want to put too much weight into that slider, and ultimately I feel that it limits range of motion because you reach a point where your leg is only so long and you can't continue through what might be full range at that stance. Those are 5 variations of the single leg Romanian deadlift that we're using here at PeakFest. We have some progressions and regressions as well, but these are some of the bigger macro level variations that we're going to use to help people ultimately get to that single leg version where they're unassisted and their back leg's moving through space. I think there's a place for single leg training in everyone's program. I hope that you guys got some benefit in terms of figuring out how you can implement that into what you're already doing. If you'd like more information, feel free to visit us at nkyfitness.com, on Instagram at PeakFest, or on our Facebook page at Peak Fitness and Sports Training. Thanks a lot. And I'm guilty myself of talking too much. That's what I'm guilty of.